I spent 27 years raising my 3 children alone. When I got sick, they sold my house, put me in a nursing home, and changed their numbers. For 2 years, they pretended I no longer existed. What they didn't know was that I had already changed my will. The day I showed up at their front door, nobody was smiling anymore. My name is Dorothy Harmon. I'm 61-year-old, and I want to tell you about the morning I stood on my youngest son's doorstep in a neighborhood I had never been invited to visit and watched his face go through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. But first I need to tell you who I was for 27 years. Because the ending only makes sense if you understand what came before it. I married Ronald Harmon when I was 22 years old. We had 3 children together: Marcus, 38-year-old, Vanessa, 35-year-old, and Kevin, 33-year-old. Ronald left when Kevin was 18 months old. He didn't leave dramatically. He just stopped coming home one day, and when I called, he told me he wasn't happy and he needed to find himself. He found himself in Phoenix with a woman named Cheryl 6 months later. He sent child support sporadically for about 3 years and then stopped entirely when he moved to Canada with Cheryl and started a new family. So it was just me. I worked 2 jobs for most of my children's lives. Days at a medical billing company in Columbus, Ohio, and 3 evenings a week waitressing at a family restaurant called Patty's on the East Side. I did this for 11 years without a single vacation. I packed lunches, attended school plays, helped with homework at midnight after double shifts, bought Christmas presents on layaway starting in September, so there would be something under the tree in December. I was not a perfect mother. I was tired most of the time. I snapped when I shouldn't have. I missed things I wish I hadn't missed. But I was there. Every single day I was there, and I gave everything I had to 3 children who I loved more than I have ever loved anything in my life. Marcus became an engineer. Vanessa became a dentist. Kevin went into finance. I watched each of them graduate, and I sat in those auditorium seats with tears running down my face thinking about the double shifts and the layaway Christmas presents and feeling like every sacrifice had been worth it. That feeling lasted about 4 years. It happened so gradually I almost didn't notice it. Phone calls getting shorter. Visits getting less frequent. Holidays that suddenly had conflicts. Grandchildren I saw in photos on social media more than in person. When I did see my children, there was a kind of polite distance that hadn't been there before, like I was an obligation being managed rather than a mother being loved. I told myself it was normal. They were busy. They had their own lives. I tried not to be the kind of mother who complained or made her children feel guilty. Then I got sick. In the spring of my 58th year, I was diagnosed with a serious autoimmune condition that affected my mobility and my energy level significantly. I was not dying, I want to be clear about that, but I was no longer able to live fully independently without some level of support and accommodation. I called Marcus first. He listened carefully and then said he and his wife Jennifer didn't have the space. He said it kindly. He said he was sorry. He said he would look into options. I called Vanessa. She said her house wasn't set up for it and her kids had busy schedules and she didn't think it would be fair to disrupt the household. She said it kindly too. She always said everything kindly. Kevin didn't answer. He called back 2 days later and talked about how hard things were financially right now, even though I knew from things he had mentioned that he had recently renovated his kitchen and taken his family to Cancun. 3 weeks later, Marcus had found an option. A nursing facility 40 minutes outside Columbus called Meadow Creek. Clean, well-rated, affordable if I sold my house. He presented it to me like a solution he was proud of. Vanessa agreed it was the best choice. Kevin said it sounded perfect. I sold the house I had lived in for 24 years. The house where Marcus had learned to ride a bike in the driveway. Where Vanessa had gotten ready for prom. Where Kevin had taken his first steps. I sold it and I moved into Meadow Creek in October, and I watched my children help me carry boxes into a room that smelled like antiseptic and then hug me goodbye and drive away. Within 6 months, all 3 of them had changed their phone numbers. I found out because my calls stopped going through. I thought it was a mistake at first. Then I thought something was wrong. Then I understood. I want to tell you what that understanding felt like. I want to tell you, but I'm not sure I have the right words for it. It was not dramatic. It did not arrive like a storm. It arrived quietly on a Tuesday morning in March, when I was sitting by the window at Meadow Creek watching birds at a feeder someone had hung outside, and I understood simply and completely that my children had decided I was done. That whatever I had been to them had served its purpose, and now I was somewhere they didn't have to think about anymore. I sat with that for a long time. Then I decided what I was going to do about it. The thing my children did not know, the thing none of them had thought to ask about because they had stopped thinking about me as a full person some years before, was that I had a sister named Ruth in Portland, Oregon, who I had stayed close to my whole life. Ruth was 71, widowed, financially comfortable, and furious on my behalf when I told her what had happened. Ruth flew to Columbus in April. She sat across from me in the Meadow Creek visiting room and she said, "Dorothy, you are coming to live with me, and we are not discussing it." I moved to Portland in May. The autoimmune condition, with proper treatment, proper rest, proper nutrition, and the kind of consistent care that comes from living with someone who actually loves you, stabilized significantly over the following 18 months. I was not cured, but I was better. Meaningfully better. Well enough to walk 2 miles in the morning with Ruth. Well enough to take a ceramics class at the community center. Well enough to start volunteering 3 days a week at a literacy program for adult learners. I also, with Ruth's encouragement, consulted an attorney named Patricia Walsh about my estate. I had a will that left everything equally to my 3 children. I rewrote it entirely. I left the majority of my estate to the literacy program where I volunteered, a portion to Ruth, and a small amount to a scholarship fund for single mothers returning to school. I left nothing to Marcus, Vanessa, or Kevin. Patricia notarized it on a Wednesday afternoon, and I drove home with Ruth, and we made soup and watched television, and I felt lighter than I had in years. I did not contact my children. I had nothing to say to them. What I had to say had already been said through 27 years of double shifts and layaway Christmas presents and midnight homework and school plays and graduation ceremonies, and they had answered me clearly enough. 2 years after leaving Meadow Creek, I flew back to Columbus for Ruth's friend's retirement party. I had not planned anything beyond that. But on the morning after the party, I woke up early and I drove to Marcus's house in the quiet suburb where he lived with Jennifer and their 2 children. I parked outside. I walked up the driveway. I rang the doorbell. Marcus opened the door in his bathrobe. He looked at me and went through those 5 emotions I mentioned: shock, guilt, something like relief, then fear, then a careful blankness that told me he was already calculating. "Mom," he said, "I didn't know you were in town." "I know," I said. "Can I come in?" I sat at his kitchen table while Jennifer made coffee with the stiff politeness of someone who knows a conversation is happening that they cannot stop. Marcus sat across from me and waited. I did not raise my voice. I had not come to rage. I had come because I wanted to look at my son across a table and say what I had to say clearly and without anger, and then leave. "I want you to know I'm well," I said. "I live with Ruth in Portland. My health has improved. I have a good life." Marcus nodded. He started to say something about how he had always meant to. I held up my hand. "I'm not here for an explanation. I came to tell you that I rewrote my will 8 months ago. I wanted you to hear it from me rather than from an attorney one day." I told him what I had done. I told him the estate would go to the literacy program and the scholarship fund. I told him it was already notarized and filed. I watched his face. Then I said, "I don't hate you, Marcus. I raised you and I loved you and I will always love you. But I want you to understand something clearly. The woman who worked 2 jobs for 11 years so you could have Christmas presents and school trips and a mother who showed up, that woman deserved better than what you gave her. I hope you think about that. I hope you think about it for a long time." I stood up. I picked up my bag. I thanked Jennifer for the coffee. Then I drove to Vanessa's house and said the same thing. And then to Kevin's apartment and said the same thing there too. I flew back to Portland that evening. Ruth picked me up from the airport and we drove home through the rain, and she asked me how it went and I said, it went exactly the way it needed to. Marcus called 3 days later. Then Vanessa. Then Kevin. I let the calls go to voicemail. I listened to the messages once and then deleted them. I have not called back. I don't know that I will. What I know is this: I spent 27 years pouring everything I had into 3 people who eventually decided I was dispensable. And I survived it. I rebuilt. I found Ruth's spare room and ceramics class and Tuesday mornings at the literacy program and soup on the couch and a life that is smaller than the one I imagined but fuller than the one I was living at Meadow Creek. Some debts cannot be repaid. Some doors, once closed from the outside, cannot simply be opened again from the same side. I changed my number last spring. Not out of anger. Just because I finally understood that my peace was worth protecting too. I learned that from my children, actually. They taught me that lesson first. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. Thank you.